welcome into a very special live podcast for us. This is Coach Speak. My name's Josh from the 12 Talk podcast, and with me is
How's it
Bryce
going, guys?
from the Hawkszone Rundown podcast. I was hoping to introduce yourself there.
Well, you pointed at it, so I assumed you were going to continue it, Josh.
Sorry. This is something that Bryce and I have spoken about for a while. As a rugby coach and Bryce as a quarterbacks coach in American football, both of us have got that vested interest in progressing talent and youth. And we really, personally, from a selfish point of view, I wanted to see what goes into it from Bryce's side, and hopefully Bryce will be interested in what goes in it from a rugby side. Because anyone who listens to the 12 Talk podcast will know that I will use a lot of rugby analogies to try and explain to our UK viewers how it may work and how it can correlate that way. And hopefully, if any of our American friends are watching this and you don't know much about rugby, I will be able to clue you in somewhat. And if there is a cry out for this, I'm pretty sure that Bryce and I will do another one.
100%.
Let's kick it off. Bryce, what is your current coaching status?
So I, with my wife, own a quarterback academy for training quarterbacks over here in Canada. So we work with kids from the age of about, I'll say 10 to up until they stop basically playing their career, whether that's college, whether that's out of high school, even, if they decide that they want to try the pro route, then we'll help them out through that process as well. And then I'm also a offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach for the city I live in's local football team. So it's called the White Rock Titans midget team. So the division's called midget.
I love that because it's in the UK, it's the most un-PC thing to say about a little person. And I was looking through some pictures earlier, and I think one of yours came up, and it said the midget team. I showed my wife and went, "That is amazing."
Yeah, no, it's very interesting how they've named. So the way the naming goes is contact football over here starts at the age of it would be the age of 8. So 8 to 9 you play Atom. And then you play 10 and 11 is Pee Wee, as they call it, which is the little guys. And then as you progress, you got your 12 and 13-year-olds are junior bantams. And then your 14, 15 are bantam. And then what I coach, 16, 17, 18-year-olds are midgets, which it makes so much sense at that point, believe me. And then after that, you have your options of going to university or playing junior. So the naming gets a little bit more PC after that. Midget's the last thing of non-PC-ness that we've got going on over here. So good times.
It is my favorite description for a youth sport age range ever. So for myself from a rugby point of view, currently I'm not coaching. I'm kind of floating and offering help to my local club, which I played for quite a while, for over 10 years. We'll get into sort of the history of that in a sec. Before that, I was coaching what we call Coutts. So these are your 16, 17-year-olds, midgets, essentially, in that sort of bracket. And I was the backs coach, plus I did some forwards coaching as an ex-hooker. I did a lot of that, but we'll be getting into sort of how quarterbacks and hooking may sort of some of the facets of the game may blend there as well. So I'm currently looking at the adults because all of my Coutts have now progressed into playing first team and second team rugby. So that's the first team, obviously the top team for the club, and then the second team are sort of those reserves who are working their way into that first team status to play in the higher leagues and do whatnot. So yeah, that is sort of where we're at with coaching. But I think every coach becomes a coach because they have probably played at a certain point in their life or have had a love for the sport. So how did you get into coaching, Bryce?
So for me, coaching, I was still playing at the time. So I would have been 16 when I had my first year coaching. So I suffered a shoulder injury. I wasn't able to play my season because I dislocated my throwing shoulder. And torn my rotator cuff and done a couple things. And so my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, was playing for the local team club. And one of their coaches kind of came up to me and said, hey, we know you're not playing this year. Would you be interested in coming out and helping our quarterback? We know you play the position. And, so I said, sure, why not? I'll take my kind of crack at coaching, and keeps me involved in the game while I can't really do anything for a year. So yeah, kind of went out, started working with their quarterback, and found out how much I really enjoyed coaching and being still connected to the game, even though I was injured. You still get a bit of an adrenaline rush coaching on the sidelines and all that kind of stuff. So I started coaching when I was 16. I continued doing it as I played as much time as I could. And then when my playing career ended, when I was 22, 23, I just gradually rolled right over into coaching and basically started working with my old high school, got on board there, did some work there for a bit, eventually moved my way up to, I coached at SFU just before the program folded out here at the university, and then kind of, had a family friend that, has been kind of like, I call him my football dad. He's been more of like a stepdad for me. And basically he's like, hey, why don't you come coach with me? I learned a lot from him through my coaching and playing career. So, that's how I ended up coaching in White Rock now. I've been doing it for the last 2 years as their offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. And for me, it's great. I still get to do all the same game planning stuff that I did when I played. I get to kind of go through the film, and I also get to help quarterbacks where I can see that they are not getting developed, whether they're with their school team or whatnot throughout their journey. I can kind of help fill in those gaps for them when I get them at the midget level. And so like my whole goal with this is to when I coach
I'm
these
going to
guys,
chuckle every time you say it. I'm just like, if someone mentions the
great.
word, if someone says the number 69, I can't help but chuckle at it. So as soon as you say midgets, that's going to be me. So I do apologize.
Fair enough. And so, yeah, so I, my whole goal coaching, because they're 16, 17, 18-year-olds, is trying to get these guys either to the university level or to the junior level, or if they just want to finish out playing as an 18-year-old, and going through that process. And some of the guys that I've worked with have turned around and started coaching because of the relationships we've built. They've decided, hey, you know what? I want to get into coaching. So what I do with a lot of my guys is I'll give them opportunities to come back and coach quarterbacks at the younger age in my academy and start working through that process. And then they eventually spawn out and do their own coaching eventually if they want to, or they can stay with the program. So, that's kind of how my coaching career started.
You started really young. So as from sort of a coaching point of view, I mean, as we were just alluding to, you've just turned 33 today.
Yep.
Happy birthday. I'm going to say it on the live. Why not?
Thank you.
I am 40 in 8 days. So okay, anyone in the comments wants to say, you don't look it, Josh. It's fine. I'll appreciate that. But yeah, this is very much for me, I started playing rugby at the age of 8 or 9. I played soccer before that, and my family have always been big rugby people. So my dad realised that I really wasn't enjoying soccer. I was a bit of a more hefty unit, I think is the way to describe it. So I played all the way through till I was sort of 16, played for my county and whatnot, which would be like the state. And then going from there, I moved abroad and couldn't play, came back to the UK after 5 years and started playing again. I then, as people will know who listen to the pod regularly, had a spinal injury, had surgery, stopped playing. But when I'd stopped playing, I was invited by my old men's team head coach at Harwich and Dovercourt Rugby Club, where I played, to go and coach the women's team as the forwards coach. So I thought, why not? I dipped my toe in there. I think I was about 29, 30 maybe. Oh, I can't remember now. And from there, it was just a simple matter of coaching them for a season as the forwards coach. Then Walter, who was the head coach, retired, and I stepped up as the women's first team coach. Carried on playing rugby, and then the worst happened. And I won't rehash it for everyone because they'll be like banging the same drum again. I then took a bit of time out from coaching and was invited back to coach our Coutts. So the under 17s, 18s, that last age group before they hit adult rugby. I was a bit of everything, then became the backs coach, because I was the only one on the coaching team who played in the backs. And I'll explain to people who don't know what the forwards and backs are in a bit. But yeah, did that, and then all of my Coutts graduated, and they're now all playing for our first and second team. So very proud of that. Some fantastic young men, and now I'm just sort of floating around, offering help where I can with the club, and always happy to help. So yeah, I think people's coaching journeys take different sort of avenues. I mean, for you, it came through injury at a young age. For me, mine was a bit later, and then you'll always tend to find the ones with a great passion for a sport will go into coaching and want to give that knowledge back to people. So for me, I've just got to say, Bryce, more power to you for doing that from such a young age and being where you are now with the coaching academy and everything. When it comes to coaching, the best coaches in the world in any sport, in any medium, they have a specific philosophy and mindset. And this is something that when I first started coaching, I battled with massively, because it was we're not professional, but I want people to act professional. I want them to have fun, but I want to win and work hard. So I really had to battle with that. What's your sort of philosophy and mindset when it comes to coaching, A individuals and B teams?
So one of my biggest, like being in the coaching career now, and also as a player, one thing I could never kind of grasp, and a player as myself, like I dealt with the old school kind of coaching in football, which was they'd berate you if you made a mistake. So they'd yell at you, tell you, you sorry, you bleeped up and whatever. And I saw teammates go through it and how guys didn't respond to it, and guys would shut down and they'd actually end up playing worse. So for me, going into coaching and just coaching with different people I have over the years, I've never been one of those coaches that's seen any value in that. And I think we've seen it start to change through college and through the NFL and stuff like that, with the style of coaching that's changing. You look at Pete Carroll, who was in Seattle. He's very much of the build you up. Like, yes, you've made a mistake. We'll learn from it. We'll move on. We'll build you up. And so for me, that's my kind of thing. When I coach is, yeah, I expect you to make mistakes. You're learning, you're growing, you're going through this. My job as a coach, as an amateur coach, I'm not a professional, I'm an amateur coach, is to develop you and get you ready for that next step. If I'm berating, yelling, cursing you out, I'm not doing my job. I'm showing my lack of emotional intelligence on how to handle a situation. And I just don't see the value in it at all. So for me, I truly am about wanting to build these kids up, give back to them what I've learned and what I've been able to achieve and go through in my career, and use that, because I see so many guys that I've played with in the past that have an ample amount of knowledge that are selfish and won't give back. Because why? Why am I giving back to somebody else? Well, you're not using it anymore. You're done. Your career's over. Your playing days are done. Go back and give back to somebody else and see if it can help somebody else go past maybe what you were able to achieve. And so I'm very much of the kind of, I wouldn't call myself a player's coach, but I'm more of the, I want to build people up and see them succeed to their ultimate succession, whatever that is. I don't want to see kids lose a passion for a game because they've had a terrible experience with an adult that's incapable of actually coaching them properly.
It's a great mindset to have when it comes to coaching. I mean, my first foray into coaching was in women's rugby, so that was an eye-opener to start with. And I've always come from my family are all police or military, so all of my coaches were very hard-nosed northern gentlemen who were, is it broken? No, get up type of thing. You're not hurt. It's not broken. You can walk. You're fine. When I started coaching, that was very much my mindset. It was just, let's just crack on with it, get it done. I want it done to the best of your ability, and that's it. And then it started creeping in that the interpersonal skills, like you said, the emotional intelligence plays such a huge part in coaching. I found this out to my detriment when I started coaching with the women, where I was quite hard-nosed and just get on with it. Like, the more you whinge, the worse it'll get. So just crack on and enjoy it. As the emotional intelligence when coaching came in, it was very much a matter of, right, I will give you the floor. I will listen to what you need from me, as opposed to me telling you what you need to do all the time. So I have this mindset of it. I say this quite a lot. It's a symbiotic relationship between a coach and a player, or a coach and a team. So I can coach them, but they need to A, want to be coached, B, want to listen. And the same way, I need to want to coach them the way they want to be coached and want to listen to their feedback in a 360 way. So my mindset was, it shifted drastically, where it was, I wanted to go in with a certain game plan with, this is how we're going to play, to, right, that's not obviously working. Let's rewind the tape. What do you want to do? What's best for the team? And who fits best where? And actually listening, that became a big thing of mine. Make sure you're listening to the players. There were some things that were non-negotiable, which is going to be the case when you're a coach, because you have to make sure they succeed. But then it's a matter of conveying those non-negotiable parts to them in a manner in which they can get on board with. Otherwise, you're just banging your head against a brick wall.
Well, and the thing for me that really, Josh, changed my perspective on coaching a lot of it was, I read Pete Carroll's book. I don't know if you've read his Win Forever book.
I've not. It's on my list. It's on my Amazon list.
As a coach, it was a huge game changer for me, because when I initially got into it as a 16-year-old, I took a lot of the same philosophies that I had been coached and was still at that time getting coached in. And I got given that book, and I started to read it, and it really flipped a switch for me. There was a chapter in there where he talks about, I started asking my players what they wanted to learn. And he went to his head coach at Pacific University at the time and said, hey, we had this breakthrough session. The players said these are the things they want to work on, and so forth. And basically the coach told him, like, you're wasting your time. You're an idiot. Don't ever do that again. I took that philosophy and went, like, when I deal with my quarterbacks, I have a whole process I put them through initially before I take a quarterback even on to be trained. And part of that is exactly what you talked about. It's, you have to meet me halfway. I can give you all the tools to succeed, but if you're not going to do the other half, which is put the work in and come with that attitude to grow and mature and go through that process, it's not going to be a relationship that works. I'm not going to pull you along and go through that process, because it's not worth my time. It's not worth your parents' time, and it's not worth your time. And so for me, that's kind of one of the things. So like, when we get into it, I'll show some of the documentation that I have that I give these kids when I initially start working with them, the tests that I give them, the breakdown syllabus of their training program, what it's going to look like each week as we go through it, and that kind of stuff, because I have to know what type of mental capacity. So I also give a lot of my quarterbacks an emotional IQ test. Where are you as an emotional person? Like, are you someone that responds well to direct, drills and how to do things? Or are you someone that needs to kind of have a more personal connection with whoever you're working with, so that gets the most out of you? So I highly recommend reading Pete's book as a coach, because it changed everything for me.
See, I read the book from, I don't know if you've heard of him, Sir Clive Woodward, who was the World Cup winning coach in 2003 for English rugby. And that kind of highlighted a lot of things. The game has moved on drastically since then, so not everything will be applicable. But even as a player, when I was reading it, I thought, oh, wow, that's kind of where we need to start taking the amateur game, especially in order, because rugby was amateur up until 1990. I'll have to double check that, but it was like 1995, I think, or maybe just before, and it was a completely amateur game. But he sort of brought in this really professional mindset and how he was going to sort of build the players up, build the team up, keep a nucleus of a team to then drive forward into winning a World Cup, which was amazing. For me, where you were talking about the IQ and having people want to learn, it's the old adage of, like, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I've had players that have come into a team that I've been coaching, and they may have been, in their perception, better than the team. As a result, they became a little bit toxic within the team, and then you have to have a really clear conversation with them as to what you expect and what they expect from you. So that's always a tricky one. So anyone thinks about coaching, don't just think it's a walk in the park. You go straight in, and what you want to do, what you think it should be like, is the magic key for it. It's not. There's a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of interaction and back and forth you have to have with your players, and there needs to be an element of trust that's built up as well. You can't go in there with all these accolades and say you've been an ex-international player, done X, done Y, done Z, been professional. That's fantastic, but if you can't speak to someone in a manner in which they can learn. So when you think about the learning types, you've got your kinesthetic, the ones who learn through doing, you've got your oral, the ones who learn through listening, the ones who learn from talking. And then you've got your sort of visual learners, the ones who you can draw something up for them. You can stand there and explain it to them, walk it through with them, but they still don't get it. You draw it on a whiteboard or put it on a play sheet like Bryce has got, and they go, oh, I get that. A switch sort of flips there. I mean, we've done the mindset and the psychology. When it comes to, say, the initial phases of coaching. So for you, we'll start with your quarterbacks. That's probably the best place to start. How do you evaluate a player sort of when you're giving them these emotional intelligence tests and sort of the, all these other bits? If you look at sort of the ability, sort of just a bullet point, ability, potential, sort of their mentality, their enthusiasm to learn, or like setting goals, whether it's their personal ones or ones you set with them.
So what I'll do with my quarterbacks generally when I get them at the academy is I do a 45-minute usually initial session. And what I'll do with the kid is I'll get them out there. They bring out a buddy of theirs that can catch. I don't usually want the parents there. I want to separate that relationship from mom and dad are there and everything's going to be okay, because I want to put them in an uncomfortable situation and learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll let them throw. I'll just tell them, hey, stand on this line. I want to see you throw. And for 25 minutes, I'll just let them throw the ball. And I'll slowly make tweaks here and there and say, hey, try this. Hey, this needs to go here. And I'll just kind of poke and prod a little bit with that. Reason for that is I can tell usually within the first 15 minutes of working with a kid, if they're a kid that I should be working with or a kid that isn't going to be receptive to the way that I train quarterbacks. Because I push my quarterbacks. As I get them farther along in their training, I will push them. And the demeanor of sessions will change throughout the months, throughout the weeks, whatever it may be, depending on where they are in their emotional state. So if I'm poking and prodding a little bit and saying, oh, like, yeah, you missed that throw because you did this, and he doesn't respond or they don't respond in a sense of, okay, coach, like, what did I do wrong? It's more of like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. And they go back and make the same mistake over and over and over again, even though I've now given you a directive of, hey, this is how I want you to fix this and shown you how to fix this. Then I know right then and there, like, this kid is not the type of kid that is a quarterback. And so the other part that I really struggle with, and a lot of parents sometimes don't like me for it, is I will tell them after maybe 3 months of training their kid, the kid initially went through the process, was really good, but I'll just see certain things and I'll go up to them and I'll be like, your kid's not a quarterback. Like, you're pushing him down an alley that he's not. Because for me, being a quarterback is not on how you throw a football. That is the most small piece of that equation. You have to be the one person that is okay with having the complete and utter focus of an entire team, fan base, and everything on you all the time. It doesn't just flip on and off. It is on all the time. You have to be on all the time. The only time you don't get to be on is when you're sleeping, basically. It doesn't matter if you're on social media, if you're in class, whatever you're doing, you are looked upon differently because of the position you hold. And so if you're not the type of person that can handle that part, I don't care that you can throw the ball 60 yards in the spiral. Great. You can go do that, and that looks great, but you'll never go past that point of just being a guy that can throw a football. Being a quarterback is more than a guy that can throw a ball. It's being basically a complete and utter person in control of your life, in control of every emotion and everything. And that's where, for me, when I work with these kids, that's the other part of my program is I can teach you to throw a spiral. I can teach you to throw 60 yards. Can I teach you how to be the person you need to be to hold this position and the standard it needs to be held in?
Like, I think you've got a slightly bigger challenge as well when it comes to coaching quarterbacks, because the quarterback is seen as the leader of a team. They're the ones, like you said, they're the focal point. They're the ones that people will always look at. They're the ones that, will always make the headlines, whether they deserve it or not. As we know, as Seahawks fans, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Someone else in the team deserves it. I mean, for what you have to do and engaging that sort of mindset, how they learn, how they interact with teammates as well, there's a lot more, in my opinion, pressure to do that than for ourselves on a rugby team. We have one captain. So rugby league, there's 13 men, one captain, maybe a vice captain. Rugby union, which is what I started playing rugby league, then went to rugby union. There's 15 men or women, one captain. So that one captain can be any position. And I've played with captains that they could be the best player, but not the most talkative and lead from the front, in which case they'll have a vice captain that does the talky bit. Or I'll have one that is that talisman who works hard, knows how to talk to all of his teammates, knows how to talk to a referee, which is a big part in rugby as well, having to talk with respect to a referee. And yeah, so I mean, for us as coaches, we can have that conversation as to who stood out for us as a leader, as someone that we think has the qualities. But for you, you have to look at a quarterback and go, like I said, you are a quarterback. You have all the fundamentals. You're physical enough. You know all this. You're a fantastic person. You're well read. You know how to pick up a play sheet, and you can lead a team from the front. That's on you as a quarterback coach to spot that. And then if they go into a college, a JUCO, anything like that, then that has been sort of carried through. For us, it could be what you're a captain in my club for 2 seasons, and then someone else is voted in.
Right.
So it becomes sort of like the coaches can put forward names, but then we have an AGM, an annual general meeting, where the players then get to nominate someone. Our club, there's always one gentleman who's nominated, and he lives in Australia, but we just do it for the fun. And he always wins, so it's always the second place person that becomes the club captain. So for you, it's an enormous amount of pressure as well when it comes to evaluating all of that from a player. For me, if I'm going to focus here, so Gary asked a question earlier. Good old Gary, he's always in here. What position did I play? So I started my life as a hooker in rugby league. So those who don't know, in a scrum, the 3, without sounding derogatory, fat boys at the front. So the scrum is the 8 men that like to cuddle and push together. It's a lot more technical than that, but the 3 at the front, I was the one in the middle. My job was to use my foot to hook the ball back to win the scrum, so we retain the ball, or to try and steal someone else's ball. Rugby league's not that much. It's just a matter of just pushing and not a lot else. But rugby union is a lot more technical, and that's what I gravitated towards. So I became a hooker in rugby union. Did that from the age of 12 till my first retirement in my 20s. Then came back and was not quite as big as I used to be. I was a lot fitter, so I went to the back row, which is flanker or number 8 at the back of the scrum, or played scrum half, which is usually the smaller person who wears the 9 on his back, who feeds the ball or passes the ball a lot. Pure because I played rugby league, and that's a big part of it. So yeah, I was a massive scrum half in comparison to everyone else I played with. Everyone else was sort of sub 6 foot, and I'm 6'2". So I used to walk out wearing that shirt and jersey, and everyone thought, that doesn't look right. So I gravitated towards hooker, and that's kind of where I see my speciality. And if I'm doing individual coaching, when I'm looking, very much the same as you, if I have anyone who wants to become a hooker, I will invite anyone to a workshop, and I'll watch them throw. So quarterbacks, obviously one hand. Some old school hookers used to do that as well, but for us it's 2 hands, and it's all about where your hand placement is on the ball, where we'll get into the biomechanics for all later, but then sort of how you're throwing it, how your accuracy is, how concentrated you are. There's certain routines some people go through as well. And that's one of the things I'll look at. And I'll let people throw, and they can throw to their friends, or I can have them throw at a goal post and just pick a spot and say, hit that. So where the posts intersect, I'll usually aim for that T there and say, hit that just as many times as you want. Here's a bag of balls, keep going. And then once I've sort of watched them for however long it needs to be, I'll pull them to one side, ask them how they felt about it, and sort of go from there. And that's where I'll do the same as what you did. Have you tried this? So why don't we try changing your stance? You might have one foot in front of the other, which can cause the ball to swerve, or you might not be putting enough through your core or anything like that. And those little bits sort of gradually start building someone up as a hooker to become this more complete package. And it's something I had to learn as well. So I was beneficial of good coaching at a good standard. But yeah, that's it's for me as well when it comes to gauging sort of their mentality, the ability and potential. The enthusiasm to learn from someone is a massive part, because the amount of people that I've tried to coach in a certain technique and how to throw a ball in straight with power and good timing, and they'll shrug you off and go, yeah, fine. I've done this for a long time. But they're not doing it the right way, which is a detriment to their team, which you find with a quarterback who goes, whatever, Bryce, I know how to throw a ball, but it might not be accurate or the timing might be off. Do you set goals for the individual? Say, let's take it a broader spectrum. Looking at it as an offensive coordinator.
Okay.
Do you set goals for them by way of what you want them to learn, where you want them to get to?
So I have actually goals in both my quarterback academy and with my offense coordinator. So I'll start with the offense coordinator side. I usually hand out the playbook to my guys about a quarter of the way into training camp. So we'll start our install process, and each week I have a plan on, we're going to install these plays and these formations. And I don't overload my players. I have a plan of like, we're going to keep basically until the last regular season game. That's when our full offense will be fully installed. And then we're in the playoffs, we'll put little wrinkles in here for each team that we play. And so I have install packages each week. So like we're going into week 4 of our regular season right now. So we had week 3 install. And so I have an expectation with my guys, and I make it very clear. And so on my coaching staff, so there's the head coach, the defensive coordinator, who's the other co-head coach, myself, who's the offensive coordinator, assistant head coach, and then there's positional coaches all the way down. And so on my staff, I have an O-line coach, I've got a couple running back coaches, I've got a couple receiver coaches. And so the way I coach is kind of similar to how Mike Holmgren coached in a lot of ways, another guy that I pulled some style from. I will very rarely get on a kid. I will get on the positional coach, and I'll go, this is my expectation where this group of players should be within the offense with their understanding of it. So we give a route tree. It's numbered 1 to 9. Here's all the routes you need to know as a receiver. You need to know 1 to 9, and we call our plays a certain way that you listen to where you are in that numerical sequence, and that's your route. And so with that being said, if you don't know your routes, you will slowly see yourself start dropping down that depth chart, and your playing time will start to actually reflect how much you're putting into studying the plays. So if I hand out an install package on a Tuesday night practice, and come Thursday, we're going through walkthrough, and I call a play that was in that install package and you don't know it, you don't get to play on Sunday in that role. And it's straight up. I'm very straight. I expect on offense you to know your job. Do your job. That's very, very simple. I don't ask much more than that. And there'll be some guys that will go above and beyond and learn multiple positions. But the simple question for me is do you know your job? If you don't know your job, you're not going to play for me, because I can't count on you to go out there and the other 12 guys, because we play 12 ball up here instead of 11-man ball.
Good old Canadian football.
Oh, we've got the rouge and all that stuff. We've got the drop kick and everything up here. So,
yes.
So for me, it comes down to how much responsibility and accountability you hold within yourself to do your job. And if you can't, sorry, you can't play. And I've had those conversations with parents where they're like, why isn't my son playing? Like, he's been here and so-and-so's now up on the depth chart over him. And I said, ask your son how much he spends in his playbook every night outside of when he does his homework and all that. Does he spend 20 minutes making sure he knows what's going on? And then the kid will come over and be like, oh yeah, I haven't been in my playbook. There, your question's answered.
It baffles me, because I mean, I think the closest we get to and we'll go further into this sort of later on in the pod. The closest we get in rugby to, say, a playbook, you'll have certain moves. So from a line out, from a hooker, we used to have this archaic thing where a hooker would call out code words and numbers, very much like, say, hiking the football, what a quarterback would call, your play calls. It very quickly has gravitated to, you don't need that, you need timing. And someone will shout set or whatever else, and people will move, and that'll be your cue to throw. But when I started playing and we had all these different calls, we had very simple, In the line-out, you had the hooker, number one. Then you had sort of 7 men. I keep getting off camera. 7 men in the line-out. And you'd have usually 2, maybe 3 jumpers. So everyone else would lift those people. Our very rudimentary calls would say black, white, Snoopy. If it was a word beginning with BLACK, it went to the second person in the line-out, so the first jumper, then white and Snoopy, fourth in the back. With a couple of numbers, depending on what you wanted to do. If it was bring the ball down and drive, or you'd do anything else, whether it's off the top or the backs had a move. And the backs would have certain calls for moves they do, but there's nothing as in-depth as American football. But the amount of hookers I've played with, where you try and give them this rudimentary instruction of what they need to do, that couldn't get it and would just they just start shouting utter rubbish, which will confuse everyone or overcomplicate it. That is a massive red flag. As a coach, if I'm saying, look, this is what we do, this is what you need to perfect before the season starts, so it's not even a matter of week by week before the season starts, and they can't do it, huge red flag for us. What do you do about, so we're talking about sort of those development areas and setting goals. How do you sort of identify them? What's your thought process with them? You already said about what you'd do if you had a one-on-one. But how do you keep identifying these going forward? So someone could perfect something and there could be something else. And
so I'm going to share something right now, which is my quarterback syllabus. So it's my basically week 1 to the end of a training program with a quarterback, or to a certain point with an off-season program, of everything we go through. So I will put this up on the screen for everyone to see. And I'm sure I'll get some questions on it once I get my mouse to work here for us.
It's a beauty going live.
Oh, it's a pain in the butt sometimes. So just give me 1 second here. And I've got my syllabus. Should be this one. There we go. Okay. So as it pops up here, I'll let you add it there, Josh, when it comes up.
You're going to start letting everyone into your secrets now.
I'm okay with that. The more people that know, the better. So yeah, so basically, I don't know if you can make it bigger, but so what I do is we have week 1.
I think you might have to control and scroll that bad boy.
Let me just get here 1 second and I'll get that set up for everybody. Let me know when it gets bigger here. That work?
Yeah, there you go.
Can you see it, Josh? Are we good?
I can see it. Yeah. I've even got to put my glasses on, so you know it's okay.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. So this is kind of my syllabus and how it kind of breaks down. So week 1, when I get a quarterback, we do classroom and on-field work. So I will give them a QB test to see their baseline knowledge. Doesn't matter if I'm dealing with a 10-year-old or if I'm dealing with a guy that's in university. Where are you at with your knowledge of being a quarterback? We get on the field. We do some basic drills, like I was saying, understanding the QB's throwing motion, so their personal throwing motion. And so when I talk to a quarterback about it, I see a lot of people try and make everybody the same. They try and make every quarterback's motion the same. That's impossible. It's plain as day impossible, because every person's biomechanics and how they move are different, because you don't know if someone's got a shoulder injury here or a hip injury from back when, and they can't do certain movements. So your throwing motion is very much built on like a personal signature on a check. I can't duplicate your signature. I could try and I could get really close, but it's still not right. That's the same thing with the throwing motion. I could mimic Patrick Mahomes, but I may never throw the same velocity or distance or anything as Patrick Mahomes, because I can't do certain things because his body's built and works differently than mine. So understanding what they do and then teaching them a proper throwing sequence. So I'm going to break a big myth to everybody here on this show. Arm strength doesn't really exist.
Isn't it? It's all hips and sort of your core, isn't it?
Core and your connection to the ground. And so the only quarterback I have ever seen that has broken this myth is Brett Favre. Brett Favre is the only quarterback I've ever seen in my entire career watching football, playing football, that has been such an arm thrower that he can make every throw with his arm. And that's just because there's been one guy, Brett Favre. You watch Patrick Mahomes and everyone's in awe of his arm angle and his this and his that he can do, and how he can release the ball around a guy and do all these kind of things. If you watch his hips, and how he torques into the ground, that's where his power comes from. It comes from his core. So when you look at a quarterback, and I actually had a session last night with a new young quarterback I'm going to start working with, and he does what every young quarterback does when they initially get taught by a person that tries to teach them the ways of throwing a football that they think is right. They throw off a mound. So if you think of a pitcher on a baseball mound, they take this big, wide drive step and they drive their front leg to their target, and then they swing their back leg off the mound. Well, you've completely eliminated your hips and core from that entire equation of throwing, and it's all arm-based. That's why you see so many pitchers with Tommy John surgeries, with ices bags on their arms and their shoulders. When you watch a quarterback throw, and a prime example is Aaron Rodgers. You watch Aaron Rodgers flick a ball and it travels 60 yards, and everyone's like, oh, look at his arm strength. You listen to Chris Collinsworth, and it's, oh, his arm strength's off the charts. Watch Aaron Rodgers' feet. Watch how quickly he can snap his back hip, so his right hip in his case, forward and stop it. And it's like if you throw a bouncy ball at a wall and you watch it in slow motion hit that wall, it's that sudden stop and that impact of all that compression of energy and then firing back off the wall that creates the bounce. So the harder you throw it at the wall, the more it compresses, the more it comes off. It's that acceleration to deceleration. And so
is just a quick question whilst I think about it. And also just a very quick shout out here to Nate Kushner.
Yeah,
calling the best QB coach in the world. But he's you know, I will happily say at the moment you're schooling me in all this, so I'm learning things. I'm going to watch this back more and more and more, so I learn more about it, and I want to do more of these as well with you. Is this why you see to the unlearned eye, the Dak Prescott warm-up dance?
Yes.
It's not a dance, but obviously that's what it comes across as.
Completely teaching. So this is the simplest way I can tell a person that doesn't understand rotational throwing. Think about when you try and open a pickle jar and you have to turn the lid one way and you're turning the jar the opposite to get it to pop. It's the same with throwing. So what you try and do is you take if you're a right-handed quarterback, so when you get to the top of your drop, you plant that right foot fully into the ground and you try and stack your right knee over your shoelaces and then try and get your chin over your kneecap. So you get about 70% of your body weight on that back leg. You want to activate your back ass cheek or glute. And then as soon as you get the weight there, you're now trying to open your front hip so you don't step to your target. You basically kind of slightly step off what we call the midline. So it'd be like drawing a line from your ankle ball. So if you think of your ankles, you got the two little ball joints on them. You're going to draw a line straight through those to your target. And you're going to take your heel of your left foot and come off that midline and just keep your left toe close enough to the one side of it that's on the left. So you open your front hip and accelerate. And as you accelerate that turn and replace your front hip with your back hip and get your hip square to the target, that's where you're getting your torque from. That's where you're getting your energy. But while you do that part in the lower half and open your front, that's where you see the ball get pulled back. So you're delaying your throwing motion by about a second to half a second. So your hips get to the target first and square, and then the arm comes through with the ball. So all your arm really does is control where the ball ends up accuracy-wise. It is taking all of that energy and taking it from your right hip and slamming it into the left side of your body, so your front side, and having it ricochet off when it stops out your arm to your target. You look very intrigued, Josh.
Do you know what? The more and more, and I've been sat here in my chair trying to move my hips and my feet. So, like I said, I'm gonna be watching this with my headphones in the garden tomorrow before I go to the rugby club, practicing this with my daughter, going, "Daddy, what are you doing?" But I have, obviously, I always have a rugby ball on hand at some point. But the way you're describing that as well, and this is where this whole pod is to try and figure out any differences and similarities. So the whole planting foot and using your hips and then the open hip to generate that force out, it's very much the same as where a quarterback would throw overarm this way. In rugby, we'd throw sideways or backwards.
Correct.
So the me and you can talk biomechanics so much. I love it because most people I talk to about it go, huh? It's the same sort of principle. If I'm passing a ball, so let's say my halcyon days playing scrum half, where I'm picking the ball up from the bottom or so from the ground, I'm planting the foot. So if I'm passing to my left, I'm planting my right foot as hard into the ground as possible, and then opening up the hip, the left hip, for the way they want the ball to go. So then for me, it'd go ball of foot, toe, to create that thrust going forward. And as I'm doing that, the ball is coming through and across my body, and I'm using my core and my hips to get the power, where then all it is a matter of my arms following through and releasing to spin. So the biomechanics there, I think, are very similar. I think where a quarterback would throw more in a straight line and we have to swivel more, but the way you've described the planting foot and then sort of coming off that middle line is very similar in the way that you'd have to get the alignment and the power there. That's really interesting. I've never actually thought about it that way from a quarterback's point of view. If we're going to do another one of these, and I'm going to have videos to show people. We need to have videos for the next one.
So I actually have some videos from a friend of mine, Joe Moore, who does quarterback training down in Oregon, More Performance. And for anyone that's aspiring to be a quarterback, I haven't really got into the video much of actually demonstrating things. He does a phenomenal job, and we coach exactly the same points. So I will show some of his videos here in a second. But the biggest thing that a lot of people don't understand either is head stability with quarterbacking. So you want to keep your spine neutral. And so what I mean by that is you'll see people when they go to throw, they try and keep their spine nice and straight and stand up like this. You actually want to slightly lean over your toes. So you have a nice, natural, flat back to yourself, because that allows you to optimize your core's ability to tighten and be explosive in that rotation. And so what you'll see is people will dip their head. And you'll see a lot of guys, when they want to throw with force, they will pull their head. And when their head pulls, their entire throwing motion will be thrown out of whack. So what you want to do, and this will be really easy for you to understand, Josh, you want to keep your spine like a T. We call it the T spine. So your shoulders are the capital part of the T, and your spine's the stem of a T. And you don't want that to tilt into an H. You want to keep it as a T as you rotate. So you want to figure like someone's taken a pipe and drilled it through the top of your skull right into the ground. So you can't teeter like this. You can just turn around on that pipe. That's it. That's all you can do as a quarterback.
There's another difference between rugby and football, apart from you call them Coutts midgets, where you've said a pipe through the top. I'm pretty sure the English humour would be a pipe through the bottom that way. But there you go. But that's, yeah, I'll go into this with from a hooking point of view. But this is fascinating. Keep going, because there's people in the chat that are saying the exact same thing. And thank you to everyone for joining in, because if you're learning as much as I am, that's the whole point of this.
So what I'll do with I'll show the rest of this syllabus here, and then I'll show some videos from Joe. So as you can see, we go through this throwing sequence. Week 2, I'll start talking the mental side of the game. So coverages, we'll go over your pre-snap protocol introduction. So DEL, boundary field boundary, and box identification. And I will explain what those terms mean, because I can see you, Josh, you were about to ask. And this will help you guys when you watch football on Sundays, because you'll see why the quarterbacks are looking around. So one of the first things quarterbacks are looking at is the secondary. So where are the safeties? Identify where your safeties are. Where are your linebackers? What front of a D line are you playing? Are you playing a 3-4 box? Are you playing a 3-4 under, 4-3 over? What are you playing? What does that box look like? How do we, as an offense, match up with that box? Then off of that, what you run into is DEL, which is depth, eyes, leverage of the defensive back. So that's when you'll see a quarterback look out to his left, look out to his right. And what he's doing with that corner is he's trying to figure out, is he looking at me or is he looking at the receiver? If he's looking at me, I know he's probably in zone coverage because he doesn't care where my receiver is going to go. If he's looking at my receiver, it's probably man coverage. Then you're looking at his depth. So the D part of that, the first part I should say, the depth. Is he pressed right up and right in his face? Is he off 7 yards? Is he at 5 yards? That will slowly tell you, okay, if he's off 7 and and he's looking at me, he's probably got a deep third of the field. He's probably going deep into deep zone coverage. Now I know if I've got a quick out 5 yards underneath, I can hit that because I'll know the linebacker's the guy that's going to buzz to that flat, or the nickel defender is going to be buzzing to that short flat. Then the last part's leverage. If I know he's inside leverage, he is protecting something and trying to keep my receiver outside. So then me and my receiver need to be on the same page of how we're going to throw a pass if we've got an in-breaking route. Does that mean I can't go to that route because my receiver is not going to get inside of him? If he's outside leverage and our receiver's got an outside route, like an outside release fade, well, now I know that my receiver might have to come in and then restack and then get back outside over top of him later on in the route. So now do I have the time to get that? Do they have a blitz coming? And that's why he's outside leverage. So that's where your protocol starts to go in. And this is all going through your mind in under 5 seconds. You are trying to process all of that information, identify where you need to go with the ball. Then we go into coverages. So your 0, your 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Basic fronts, so like we talked about, the shades, the defensive line terms for their stems, their stunts, their shifts that they can do, and your base fronts. So we go through all of that stuff within the second week of the program to make sure these guys understand what they're dealing with mentally. Then when we get on the field, I'll introduce quick game throwing. So you're in the gun, take the snap quick, get yourself aligned to your target and throw. So these are all routes that are going to be under 7 yards in depth. Then we go under center and we work our 3-step drop. And then we get into our routes and concepts. And that's all within the first 2 weeks of me taking on a quarterback.
That is intense. Like, how many sort of, if you're working with a quarterback doing this, say this isn't within 2 weeks, how many sessions would you look at having in order to install all this?
So to do this, depending on the quarterback, depending on the age, I usually do a week and then a week gap and then a week again. Is what I'll do with most of my quarterbacks. Give them a week to process this. And it also shows me how dedicated they are. Because in week 2, if I get you back and I want to go into all of this stuff and you're not able to do the certain things I taught you in the first part, we've got a problem. Because the throwing mechanics and the sequence all get incorporated still into the in the field because they're still learning it as we go. Mm-hmm. But I'm also trying to teach you how what I'm working with you on applies to these areas of your game. So we go to week 3. We go into cover 0 specifically, not like 1, 2, 3. We're going to look at base cover 0. We're going to look at where the holes are in it. What is a thief? What's a robber term? What's a hole? Because I'm trying to teach them what a defense is doing. Because when you're a quarterback, you're not really playing against the other 11 guys or 12 guys on the field. You're playing chess with the defensive coordinator and the coach on that sideline because he's watched film on you, trying to understand, how do you think? How do you operate? What can I throw at you that you're not going to understand? This is where you go through it as a quarterback and you go, okay, if he's throwing me cover 1 robber, which for everyone understanding, that means that everyone is in man coverage except for the 2 safeties. Your strong safety is going to rob down to the middle of the field and kind of sit in behind your backers in between the hashes, and your other safety, your free, will be up over top. And he'll usually play to the wide side of the strong called side of the field. Then we go over the 3-4 front. What does an over and an under look like? What is the defensive line's responsibilities and gaps and shades? So if you have to change a play, depending on your age, if you're looking at a 3-4 and you've got a cover 1 robber call that the defense is coming and showing you, where can you audible to a run call? What's the shade of the D line? Is the D end way outside and playing like a 9 tech, which is way outside your left tackle? Cool. We can run power right in there and we'll be fine. And then when we get to the field, we'll work on throwing on the run, which is completely different than throwing in your pocket because everything with your lower half now changes to do that. So then we go to week 4, same kind of thing. Now we're looking at 4-3. Now we're looking at cover 3. So this is the Pete Carroll staple. This is what they ran for years. Your cover 3 strong, your weak, your buzz, your cloud, your sky, and what all those terms mean. And then zone blitz tendencies, your boundaries, players, your inside backers, your safety and corner blitzes. Where are they likely going to come from? What's it going to look like? And so one of those things that I teach with their pre-snap protocol is boundary, field, boundary. And so on a football field, you have 2 terms. You have the field side, which is the wide side of the field, and the boundary side, which is your short side. And so when I say boundary, field, boundary to my quarterbacks, and I'm teaching them that, it's you start looking at the short side of the field as you call your cadence out. And then you move the field side, and then you come back to the boundary side, because 90% of the time your blitz will come from the short side of the field because it is the shortest distance from you to that defender. They will very rarely bring a wide side field blitz because there's too much space to have to cover, because in a blitz situation, the defense is exposing a hole in their scheme and they're expecting you to miss it. So the rule of thumb I teach all my quarterbacks is you identify a blitz and you have a pass call on, you throw into that blitz, because there won't be a defender that's able to replace him quick enough if you identify it and hit it.
I cannot wait. My little brother, little is in his mid-20s now, but he played quarterback at college or university over here, and he's now playing sort of British American football. I can't remember what league, Cambridge Coutts, and he's a quarterback as well. So I'm going to be making him watch this, because he will find this really enlightening, because I don't know what level of coaching he's had, and B, really intriguing, because I'm looking at this, and I think we had a comment before from True Drew Sports just saying it's absolutely insane how fast you have to process this. So from a coaching and sort of a learning point of view, and then on the field as well, everything that you're saying now, I kind of knew what quarterbacks had to do, but not as in depth as this, and this is blowing my tiny little mind.
So the other thing that I work on with these guys, so week 6 here, so I've skipped ahead a bit. We will review everything from weeks 3 and 5. I will go back and see where they're at. Then we have our interview for prep and social media content. So part of my program is, how do you handle yourself in this world now that we live in with social media and entertainment? And so we'll start working through them. This is what you put on your Twitter. This is what you don't. Don't like these things. Don't share these things. Don't do this, because college scouts and colleges have people that literally will look at your social media side of things and will decide if you're a red flag player or not based on the type of social media content that you're looking at and liking. So I tell my guys, what you're best to do, if you're going to do that and you like to like weird car things or things that may be a little bit questionable, you need to have a burner account that has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your name, nothing at all. Your account with your name needs to be treated like a business account. That is who you are presenting to the world, because the minute you sign up to be a quarterback, you are in a constant job interview all the time until you stop playing quarterback. And so that's where you look at people that get upset with Gino about what he's posting and stuff like that. You're constantly on it. So here's the other part that we get into. RPO day, I like to call it. Run pass options. So I will teach them the defenders you're reading, who you read on the D line, who you read in the linebackers, the DBs, the coverages, the concepts we go over. Then we get on the field and we throw this stuff. And I'll ask the kids, we'll brainstorm. What coverages do you want to see? Do you want to see this? What do you see a lot when you play? And we'll go through it and we'll rep drills based on it. And then we get into 5-2. I get into things with some kids. So like, as crazy as this sounds, I have some kids that I've been working with since they were 10 who are now 13 that understand what cover 4 palms is. And most university guys are just learning that when they get there. Because I will teach my young kids, if they show the aptitude, I will stick them into sessions with my older guys and the throws that they're asked to make so they can get a feel of what it's like. We have rhythm timing. So 5-step drops with no hitch. Gather, close, any term you want. You don't. You plant that foot in the ground, ball's coming out. Re-drills with timing. And so then we go into week 9. We do different drills through there. And then week 10 is a gap week for us in this program. So understanding our social media, how to conduct ourselves, how to be a leader on and off the field, how to handle being comfortable, being uncomfortable. We go through all that kind of stuff. We go through all these drills. And then by week 13, I give them a final QB test on everything that I gave them initially at the beginning. I re-give it to them, see how they score. And then we do a field review. And then what I do with them, and I'm sure you might have seen it on my social media, I do pro day script throwings with them. Mm-hmm. So they get an hour-long time frame to go out and go through the same type of pro day script throwing a college guy will go through if he's trying to go through the NFL combine. We'll do every throw. We'll go through it, and I'll put them through the drills. So then they have that, and it's filmed by a professional videographer. And they have that to then show their universities. And I let guys that are 13 years old do it, and I let my guys that are seniors do it. Everyone does it if they want to do it. But it's allowed to show you where your progress is at. So speaking of that, I will show you what the test looks like that I give these guys. So when I flip it over here, just give me 1 second.
Take your time. I'm still processing this myself, to be honest, dude. It's this is amazing. I mean, whilst you're sort of moving that over, just to see what it is you're putting these kids through to prepare them for life further down the line. For me, that is the fundamentals, the best bit about coaching, preparing a young person for the sport that they love at a higher level. The fact that you've got in there the social media aspect as well, I think that is something that is so, it doesn't seem to be conveyed. I mean, you still see professional sports people who are, like, you see them liking and resharing things on Twitter, on Instagram, and you think, is that really the person you want to convey to, your young fans? You want them who follow you to see exactly what you're doing there. That's a no-go. That's what you said, a burner account. Everyone has got a personal life or whatnot, but then you need to be able to separate that from what you want to be your professional life. So it's very much like me. I work in insurance, the beigest of beige industries to some people. But on the flip side of that, I'm a Seahawks fanatic, obviously host the 12 Talk pod. I'm a rugby fanatic, rugby coach, doting dad, and I love DJing. Well, that's never something that I would bring into my professional, say, LinkedIn profile, because it doesn't need to be there. That's not the image I want to convey to people, where people go, this man is going to insure my holiday park, which is worth millions, but yet on a weekend I see him at the rugby club at 11 p.m. with his friends after a few beers. That's not what you want to see. So for kids to be taught that at a young age, especially at that bridging age where it's sort of in the UK, as soon as you hit 17 going into 18, that's when you start going to the pubs and bars. I'm not sure what the legal drinking age is in Canada.
It is 19.
So there you go. It's that sort of that time in their life where they need to have the boundary set as well. And if they don't have that, it all blurs, and that's when you see people don't get as far as they could be.
Well, and one thing I'll do is, so I have all my quarterbacks that I train, I have them on 2 different social media. So I have my personal one, which part of my thing that my wife's done a great job with these kids. And I got to give her a lot of credit with her setting up this company, because I was about, at the time that we started Pinnacle QB Academy, I was almost done training because I just couldn't handle it, the political bureaucratic side of things. And my wife and me sat out on our deck one night, and she's like, you cannot stop coaching. She goes, you are way too important to these kids. You need to keep doing it. We need to find a different way, whether that's us doing it on our own in a different capacity. And so we will do things where we will have the kids over to our house, and we'll do a Madden tournament, or we'll have them over and she'll teach them how to cook certain meals for when they go to college, so they can make easy, healthy meals for themselves at college that don't cost a fortune. And, I will have conversations with my quarterbacks about things outside of football life, whether it's, things they may not want to talk to somebody else about, but they feel comfortable talking to me about. We'll have those conversations like, hey, I don't know how to tell my parents that I'm really not enjoying, art school or whatever I'm into, and I really want to go into engineering or whatever. And, and we'll sit and we'll have that conversation of like, hey, you have to be comfortable with it. Remember, you got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And we'll kind of go through that. So it's not just for me about the football. It's about seeing these kids just succeed at life in general and being set up properly for the rest of their lives. And so that's for me where my wife has taken such a big step with that side of my coaching, even, and how I look at things is sometimes you got to look at it beyond the football. Like, you may never know, a kid comes out to your practice, you may not know that he's going through a bunch of shit at home or what's going on, but there's a small thing, like, and for me, like, that's sometimes how I'll look at the guys that I work with. Like, some kid may have because I have 18-year-olds, so they're out of high school for 1 year. They may have a really shitty day at work, and they may not know how to process it. And they all of a sudden are super irritable about something that, I joke with them about all the time. And I will pull them out of practice and I will talk to them about, hey, what's going on? Like, how are you handling, like, is something going on outside of football that's bugging you? Like, what's going on? And it's just how I've operated, how I will continue to operate. And one thing I have to be very thankful for my wife, that she's kind of opened my eyes to that side of the coaching world, which is we need to be there for these kids just outside of them being between the lines on a football or a rugby field. You need to be a mentor for them for life, so that way they can go off and do the things that they want to do with their lives, because football is this much of their life. That's the other 30, 40, 50, 60 years of their life that's going to matter. So for me, I will like follow them on their stuff. So like we talk about social media. I've had quarterbacks post things on their social media, and I will send them a message being like, hey, remember what we talked about? Why are you posting doing one of these dumb TikTok things, the grimace shake thing or whatever it is? You know, you want to go do this. This is going to completely derail it for a 30-second video you thought is funny. Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, oh, like, okay, I'll take it down. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, I'm just letting you know I found this. Do you think a college scout's going to find it too? And they'll be like, oh, I didn't think of that. And they'll take it down. And then we'll have a conversation later on and be like, thanks for not, saying anything to my parents or whatever it is. And I'm like, look, I am looking out for you and what you've told me you want to do. If you don't want to do that anymore, let me know and we'll go a different route. But if this is what you want to do, we got to make sure you're not going to do anything to sabotage yourself by thinking doing something like that in the world that we live in now is okay.
I've got to say I'm gonna blow some smoke up here right now. The holistic approach that you've got from an academy is so refreshing, because there's obviously in the US, in Canada, you've got the college sort of the scouting system, everything like that, and then there's the progression to the professional sports from there. The UK don't really have that. So I've got a friend who he is part of the coaching team, community coaching team for one of our big Premiership sides who won the Premiership last year, Northampton Saints. He does a lot of one-on-one coaching as well. But for us here, it's very much like that's kind of where it stops as well, because the kids will get to a certain point where they'll go to high school. Some will go to like a public school where they get trained by ex-internationals or have got a really high level anyway, and they're seeing then having to integrate into that lifestyle. They don't have to rely on an individual coach. Or you go to university, and university rugby goes one of two ways. Either you go to university near a professional club and may get picked up by their academy, or you go there thinking that you are God's gift to a rugby field, realize that you're not, and the university lifestyle takes over, which is drink, girls, partying, and everything that comes with that, and rugby falls by the wayside. And they don't have this educator, the leader from such a young age to show them where their life could be and how to shape it to get to where they want to go at the top of the mountain. So I doff my hat anything to it. It's amazing. I'm so glad we did this pod, because I'm understanding so much about what you do now. You wanted to show us the test, didn't you? Let's do that before we go into
So I'll show the test. So it's up on the thing there, Josh. If you just want to click it, I've got it set up there for you.
There we go.
I've zoomed it in, so hopefully everyone can see it. So this is the initial test I will give them, and the test I will give them at the end. And so what I ask them to do is draw the following defensive fronts based on your ability. So some kids will know this, some kids won't. And you don't need to draw the DBs. So that's linebackers, D-line. How do they line up? 3-4, 4-3, 5-2, 3-3, and a bear front. And you show me what you know. What do these two terms mean? Over and under.
Sorry, just that first section there. Are you asking for the way that just the defensive front would line up?
Just the defensive front. So what a 3-4 is. So don't worry about the DBs, the safeties, the corners. Give me the down linemen and the linebackers.
That's fine.
And 4-3, 5-2, 3-3, and a bear front. And then I ask him what the defensive front terms over and under mean. And so that's depending on how you shift, essentially. But some kids won't know that. So what this also gives me is where I can focus with these kids. Maybe I got to spend an extra week going over fronts with the kid because he doesn't understand them. He's never been taught them. And then I get into the base coverages. So don't draw the D line, just draw the coverage. So cover 0, where your corners and safeties are, cover 1 man, cover 1 robber, cover 1 thief, cover 1 hole, all these kind of things. I go through all the coverages. Tampa 2 zone invert, cover 3 strong, aka base cover 3 weak, cover 3 buzz. Like I will go through in depth. So I have certain kind of understandings of where guys should be. Cover 4 stick, cover 4 special, cover 4 push. So in the space here, draw out what the zones look like. Cover 4 palms. What do the zones look like of everybody? And then I get into this. Answer the following questions to your best of your ability. What are the steps to the QB protocol for identifying defense? So we went over DEL, boundary field boundary, all that kind of stuff. I'll see if they know any of that. They may not have the same terms, but do they have a base understanding of it? What's the difference between a sprint out and a bootleg? What route concepts are considered quick game routes? Describe the specifications of a quick route. So it's a route under 7 yards. These are some concepts. What routes are considered intermediate routes? Give me the specifications. Deep routes, same thing. What's the defensive box? What different linebacker positions names? There are 4 linebackers. What are the defensive line shades of the offensive line below? So you put in the shades. Name the gaps. Number the running holes. So you should be able to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7. What is a gather step used for? So I go very, very, very down to the minute detail of how to play this position, almost to like, how do you turn a piece of blade of grass on the ground with your heel? What does the term an apex mean for a defensive player? There are 3 keys to identify a defender's responsibility. What are they? DEL. There you go. Write it in. If a linebacker is lined up in the boundary with only 1 receiver lined up in the boundary, what is the linebacker most likely to do if he has no zone or man? So you'd write, I think he's going to blitz. What does the term blitz mean? What's appropriate for your Twitter handle name to consist of? So I go into that amount of detail with these guys and this initial test. And then at the end, I will re-give them this test, and they can see how much better they scored from their first one at the beginning of the offseason.
I love the fact that you said when you administer that test, it's not like a pass or fail.
No.
Or oh, right, you didn't get these, you're not good enough. It's an aptitude test to then see where they can work better, or you can work better with them to help them progress. And that's amazing. I'm blown away by the level of detail. So I follow your account for the Pinnacle QB Academy, and I see the work that you do with some of these young men, and it's amazing. But seeing everything else from a more in-depth view it's mind blowing, mate. You should be very proud of that, and so should your wife. So kudos to your wife. She needs a big old pat on the back. For pushing you into that. That's what a good wife does.
She is the main reason behind the whole Pinnacle QB Academy. And I got to give her a lot of credit in that regard. And so, but I can show some videos before we jump off of this.
Yeah.
Some other topics, but I'll just share my Instagram page because I've got some stuff saved up in here from Joe and some stuff that I do with some of my quarterbacks. And have done for a while. So I'll just bring this up here for the listeners and viewers. So, so this is my personal page. So I post on both. But just here's some of the drills that I do. So this is one of my young quarterbacks who's 13. It's Jordan. And basically right now what we're working on is he's been a linear thrower. So push to throw. This is him when I first started working with him this summer. And what we do is we use a little hexagon and we work on stepping off. So you can see the line here, step to the cone, turn and throw. But we start with a towel. The reason for the towel is there's no stress. We got to work through this motion. We got to break down habits. He's thrown a ball a certain way for months. So for years even. So now we're trying to break that down. So I've got guys, here's one of my older guys, Tristan. He's a left-hander, so I work with both lefties and righties. He had a weird hitch in his throwing mechanics where he dropped this elbow. So we were basically working through the sequence, okay? So I will do this for 45 minutes We won't even use a ball sometimes. We'll literally just do stuff like this for 45 minutes to get the understanding of what it is, and then we'll move into a ball. And so then what you'll see is I'll work with them for months on months, and then we'll get to a point where if I go to, where is it here? It's somewhere along here. Give me 1 second. I'll bring up my account. The other one.
Okay. I was just admiring the fact that you have one of ours on there as well.
Oh, I do. I have everything on here. So this is my Pinnacle account. And so this is Nate, who's been in the comments. This is what his pro day video kind of looks like. So I have a buddy come out.
Nate.
We do the whole thing with it. We go over where they play and put him through all the paces of the throws that he's going to have to make at the next level. Over and over again. He goes through everything. And so you can see with his back leg how he's firing his hip through, and you can see the slight delay. And that's where that snap and that flex in his arms able to come out. And it doesn't matter if it's these shorter throws to our deeper throws. It's all about his hip. So 1, 2, 3, get foot in the ground, turn and throw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, get our foot in the ground and throw. And so Nate's been working with me for 2 years. He plays on my White Rock team. He's one of our receiver quarterbacks. And then I'll do these bigger group sessions.
Wait, is Nate a midget?
Nate is a midget, but he's not an actual midget.
I just saw he's 5'11". It's fine. Don't worry, Nate.
So this
we
is
know your real person sizes.
This is one of our on-field group sessions. So what we do in like this drill particularly is teaching quarterbacks how to evade the upfield rush of a D end, give our tackle the ability to fix that, and then move. And then this is quick game. So this is just catching and throwing. So we're out of the field. All those guys standing in line are quarterbacks from the ages of 13 all the way up to 17. So we get out, we make the throw on the run. We got some first-time guys like Cole here. He gets out. And these are guys that I've worked with for a while, guys that I haven't worked with. But this is where I let the younger guys, so like a Noah, come work with my older guys. So some of these guys here, there's Nate. They're grade 12. They're going on to university in a year or two. And some guys are just getting into high school. So that's kind of how the program works. But speaking to throwing mechanics in general, I've got a couple saved reels here from my buddy Joe. And let's see. So head stability being one. So I'll see if the volume works here. Here we go.
I don't think we've got the volume on here. What's this guy's? I think I follow this guy.
Joe's very good. So Joe has done a phenomenal job, and I highly recommend anybody follow Joe's page. He does a lot of great work. And so one of the things that we were talking about earlier is the pull phase, the correct sequence of throwing. So this is what it should look like. So that's the kind of delay I was talking about. You're kind of going opposite of your body. And so it really comes down to your force production, your hip rotation. So here's your hip rotation.
For anyone listening to this, I'd advise you watch the YouTube video of this either on the 12 Talk podcast YouTube, or if you follow the Hawkszone Rundown, it'll be on there as well. This is fascinating to see. When we finish these bits up, there's a couple of questions and comments that have been made that I just want to throw out there as well, because like I said, the biomechanics of this, and I can see where, whilst they're not directly aligned, I can see the similarities so much in, especially the hip movement and the placement and planting of the feet. They correlate they're so similar in, even though they seem to be backwards, the way that I think that's just because of the movement of the body, where you've got to get the power through. The principle of planting and then using your hips and the rotation to get the power, it's exactly the same in both sports. There you go.
So
we found one commonality, at least.
I'll show 2 more videos here. And so, like I was talking about that wall, the analogy with the bouncy ball on the wall, your left side or your off side of whatever you throw. So if you're left-handed, it would be your right. If you're right-handed, it's your left side. That's your deacceleration. And so one thing me and Joe do is we use a tennis racket to train that.
So what is essentially showing is the rotation of the body where it starts. So for me, looking at so what is showing for me is it starts with the rotation of the body, starts with the feet, and it shows the rotation through the hips and then how it all comes round. So I can see where the tennis racket would work because the way you'd hold it, the natural motion of pulling through.
So here's the last one. This is the thing that a lot of people don't understand is about finishing square to your target. So your chest and your hips need to finish square at your target. So this is the last video I'll play from Joe.
So essentially what he's showing is where you're starting on that side-on stance, wherever you're going to be throwing that ball, you want your hips to be squared facing your target there. So from what you were saying before about the whole planting of the foot and then the movement of the back foot, you want that to be following through exactly to where you're throwing the ball. So you don't want to be, obviously we've seen people like Pat Mahomes with the no-look passes or anything like that, but you want to be rotating your body
and stopping
it square to where you want that ball going in that direction.
And so part of the issue for a lot of young quarterbacks and even older quarterbacks that are relearning how to throw or trying to get arm pain out of their throw is their front foot will go straight to the target. This is something I'm going to talk about here, and this is the stride step. So our front foot is called our stride step as a quarterback. And
talk us through it when it goes through this video, because I'm very conscious that if we've got people listening, they're like, what are they doing?
Okay, so see this line? This is what I was talking about, the midline. Okay, so we put our heels on this blue line. Now you want your toe to stay as close to this side of the line. So if you watch Joe's toe here, it allows you to open your hips, but as soon as this pulls, this turns. And you see how it's slightly closed. It's not straight at the target. The reason for that is when you go straight like that, your hips are going to over-rotate and you're not going to be able to actually stop your acceleration. See how it pulled across? Yeah. That pull across is you losing velocity on your ball. So you want to be able to stick that front foot and that stride step in the ground, have it solid, don't lock it. And what I mean by lock it is, if anyone remembers when Tom Brady blew out his knee, he locked his leg straight and the hit impacted it and it buckled. You watch Tom Brady from that moment on, he became a rotational throwing quarterback instead of a linear throwing quarterback. And so with that, you keep this on a slight angle and you bend it and you turn into the ground. That's where you get the stability in your base. And your base is everything here and down. So I'll let Joe explain it a little bit once we get back to the top of the video. But yeah, so basically you want to have this slightly closed. And you see how he's got a bit of a bend there. Both knees. And the ball here of his foot does not come out of the ground really. It stays in the ground. And that's how you create stability. So when he goes and does his overpull here, I'll put the video and we can listen to him explain it, and then I'll answer any questions after that because I can see someone into the chat. So here we go.
I don't know if the sound's coming through to us. That's the problem.
So he calls it a classic L shape, basically, is that last part of that. And so the classic L shape is what you want to get away from as a quarterback, because the more you're in that classic L shape, the more problems you're going to get into with over rotating. And so, yes, Gary, I saw that there was no sound. I apologize. I highly recommend following that if you want to with Joe. Me and Joe coach quarterbacks like to a T the exact same way with the way that we teach biomechanics side of it. So these are things that if you listen to older coaches that have played back in the 70s and the 80s, they think that guys that coach the way I do don't know what we're talking about. Oh, it doesn't work. You look at all these quarterbacks, Montana, Marino, they didn't do any of this stuff and it worked fine. The era of football was different. You never saw Joe Montana be faking to a running back and then having to pull out with a 6'5", 290-pound DN that runs a 4.40 come flying at him and try and throw around that guy. The game has evolved. The game has changed, and so does the quarterback position and adapting to it. I think there's a question in there actually from UK 12th Man.
There is. He's a member of our Discord, and I think pretty sure he's in our fantasy football league as well.
I believe so too, yes.
So I'll read the question if you want to answer it.
Go for it.
So, Bryce, will these drills work for a flag football QB as well?
100%. Quarterbacking is quarterbacking. So, with flag football, I still play flag football. I still work on these drills, and I still use them myself. Playing the position of quarterback doesn't matter if it's flag, doesn't matter if it's contact, or if it's throwing. You want us to get better at throwing the ball with your kids, or if you're coaching with the kids that you coach. All this stuff works for the quarterback position. The quarterback position is universal in that regard. It doesn't have to be contact or non-contact for these drills to work. So if anyone in this chat or that wants to see stuff or has questions or wants drills, feel free to message me. I can send you stuff on some drills you can do just at home with a towel and a piece of tape. You just put a piece of tape on the ground, you pick up a kitchen towel, and you work on stepping off that midline and rotating. And that's most of my quarterbacks. I'm sure Nate can attest to it, is one of my go home drills after the first week, or if they're struggling with their hip rotation, I will send them home and say, hey, put the piece of tape back on the ground, grab the towel, and start working on your hip rotation again, because you've got issues in it. We need to break those issues down and come back with solutions for them. And
if you don't, it's going to be a shameless plug here as well, but if you don't want to message Bryce directly, you can join in the Discord. So the 12 Talk podcast have a Discord. Bryce is a member, very active member as well. We have a great community building there as well. But I'm pretty sure if there's enough people in our Discord that ask Bryce for any advice, that's probably something you might throw in there. I'm putting you on the spot there, mate. I'm really sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's a pin post on RX, so anyone can join. It's free to join our Discord. We're not going to charge you for coming to chat to fellow Seahawks fans from all around the world. But this has been, I didn't even get a chance to talk about my rugby biomechanics. So I'll save that for the next one, and I'm going to get videos and pictures and diagrams and everything. But this has been fantastic. Bryce, before we go, because it's your birthday and I've kept you for an hour and a half, I feel so bad. Is that a new hat as well? No, that's the one you got in Seattle.
I got this one recently. Last time I was in Seattle.
You sent me the pictures, and I live in jealousy forever. Thanks. But when Mitch and I come out to Seattle to watch a game, hopefully next year, we'll definitely give you a shout, because I learned so much about quarterback play sitting next to my little brother who's a quarterback, and I can guarantee I would learn so much talking to you as well and sitting next to you for a game. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you on any of your socials, and obviously the pod as well?
Okay. For me, so I've got Pinnacle Quarterback Academy on Instagram. You can follow myself on Instagram as well, Bryce Barker Coutts. And then for the Hawkszone Rundown, our YouTube channel is the Hawkszone Rundown. It's me and Ryan McMillan. We run a Seahawks podcast over there. We've guest appearanced on the 12 Talk numerous times and had them on ours as well. And then in regards to that, we just launched our apparel store. So we have some hats, hoodies, t-shirts that we've just started slowly integrating. We've got a couple alternate logos that we're going to show out for the show. So go over and check that out. It's called the Hawkszone. And so if you go and type in the hawkszonerundown.com, it'll take you right to our storefront. And then outside of that, we've got a post-game show following Sunday's game, our live reaction post-game show at, I believe, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time we're going to do. And then the following Monday on the 23rd, we'll have Jackson Bevins on to do a preview of the Detroit Lions game. So we got that coming up.
Oh, and as someone who, like I said, has appeared and had you guys as awesome guests on ours, and basically I've got notifications set whenever you guys put a new video up. And when you start doing these all 22 breakdowns, I will be all over that, because to hear you talk about that would be fantastic. Don't worry, I'll do your plug-in for you, mate. It's fine. I'm a pro at it now.
You are.
Yes. What can I say? It's not for want to try and all like of effort with it. But if you've liked what you've heard, I'm pretty sure Bryce and I will do this again, because there's so much more we can talk about. We found a lot of similarities in the way we both coach, the way that American football and rugby are aligned in quite a few of our values, and especially as coaches. You can like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with whoever. If you're a rugby fan who wants to learn more about American football, or an American football fan who wants to learn a little bit about rugby, come and join us on these. We'd be more than happy to speak to you, and let us know in the comments. Let your friends know that we've done this. It'd be awesome to get some more feedback on it. Bryce, I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been brilliant. I've been Josh from the 12 Talk podcast. You can find us at 12 Talk Pod on X, Instagram. We've got a Facebook group. Obviously, we've got the YouTube. If you're not a fan of video pods, we're also on Spotify, Amazon, all those ones as well. We will be coming back to you on Monday with a post-game show. We're changing it up, because usually we've got a Seahawks fan. This time we have a Dolphins fan who's going to be coming on. So hopefully it will be a happy pod from us, as opposed to a sad one with the Dolphins.
Oh, I've got PTSD, man, in regards to this, because of backup quarterbacks playing in Seattle, and that never has gone well for us.
I know, dude. I know. So I'll be watching on bated breath. We'll obviously be in the Discord talking about it. What's your next pod? When's that coming out?
So we got our recording with Jackson Bevins will be up on Wednesday next week for the preview of the Detroit Lions game, and then our post-game show on Sunday, and then probably on Friday will be the first all 22 breakdown of us versus the Detroit Lions and how we match up. So that'll be me breaking it down with the all 22 footage.
Love it. But from me, Josh at 12 Talk, and from my good buddy Bryce from the Hawkszone Rundown and Pinnacle QB Academy, put that in there as well. Thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Friday evening for the UK, and midday for those of you in the North America, I guess, Canada, yeah. America. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Peace.
See ya.